welcome to the Fundamentals of Quantitative Research in Social Sciences and Education webinar. I'm your co-facilitator, Terrell Strayhorn, joined by
Jaquin Johnson.
We are so looking forward to our time with you to talk about inductive versus deductive approaches. Today's webinar has several learning objectives. At the end of this webinar, active participants, now listen, that's folks who take notes and listen to the whole webinar, will be able to, one, distinguish and explain the difference between inductive and deductive research. Two, you should be able to easily define key terms like independent, dependent variable and use them in your education research. And then third, summarize belonging theory, especially its core elements.
So there are three methodologies in research. Quantitative methods use numbers as evidence, collecting information from sources such as surveys, census, surveillance data, large-scale data, also known as secondary data. And by definition, the method is a phenomenon that can be quantified in some way, whether by counting things or measuring their dimensions or characteristics. Qualitative methods are used to study a phenomenon that cannot be easily quantified, collecting data using focus groups, observation, or in-depth interviews, or sources such as audio, video, or text documents. Last but not least, mixed methods is a combination of quantitative and qualitative approaches within a research study to take advantage of their particular strengths.
In this webinar, we will focus on quantitative research methods as we discuss approaches to research, inductive and deductive, as well as highlight some examples from our own work.
So there are two types of variables in research. One is independent. These are characteristics such as race, gender, social economic status, disability status, that explains or predicts variations in the dependent variable. Second is dependent, and it's outcomes or response variable. If you're studying or trying to study engagement in African-American males or perception of campus in African-American males to understand their sense of belonging, your independent variables will be engagement and perception of campus, and your dependent variable will be sense of belonging.
Now, lots of people report confusion about understanding the differences in approaches to research. What's inductive? What's deductive? How does theory relate to data? And then what's the difference between hypothesis testing and empirical generalization? Well, we have found one framework that has been useful for understanding the differences between these concepts. This we call the research circle. Depicted in figure 2, taken from Jane Miller's book, Making Sense of Numbers. And it's just one way of trying to wrap your mind around these concepts. Let's look at inductive research. Inductive research starts with data. It uses data to generate theory about observed patterns. From data and analyze data, and researcher starts to surmise, guess, or hypothesize plausible relationships that exist amongst the data. This we call theory. Theory is nothing more than a hypothetical explanation of a relationship. It is a plausible explanation of some observed phenomenon. Some people even call it an educated guess. Now, it is a little bit more than just conjecture that you pull out of your mind. It is usually based on observed patterns in a data set matched with insights from a literature review. Inductive research deserves an example. Let's consider you were going to do a study on drunk driving in the state of Texas. To do this, you collected data on accidents caused by drunk driving, and looking at these rates and numbers of accidents caused by drunk driving over some period of time in the state of Texas, you had an idea, looking at maybe the location, the time of day, the zip codes where these accidents occurred, you thought to yourself, I wonder if the availability of ride sharing apps, that is, if people, when they were consuming alcohol, could call Uber or Lyft rather than getting behind the wheel of a car, if that would somehow increase or decrease the accident rates in that area. You don't have any data on ride sharing apps. You have no data on Uber or Lyft. You just have an idea, a hunch. Maybe you read something in a magazine or saw it on social media. Taking the data and then generating a hypothesis and a plausible theory is inductive research. Quite often, researchers and scholars do this using qualitative or descriptive quantitative methods.
On the other hand, inductive research, you take the guesswork out of the equation because you already have the theory. It starts with theory and tests hypothesis. Hypothesis is a tentative statement on two variables. I will try to use your example if I can remember. You hypothesize that if the neighborhood has more ride-sharing options in the area to assist drunk drivers from getting behind the wheel under the influence, because we all know the famous saying, drive sober or get pulled over, you may need to collect data on ride-sharing options, accidents, and neighborhoods to either confirm or challenge the theory. Again, inductive research starts with data to develop theory. Deductive research starts with theory to test the hypothesis through the collection of data.
So now we're going to transition into sort of an on-ramp into talking about our own research as an illustration for you of these principles. It's a deductive, quantitative, exploratory project. Deductive meaning we start with theory. So let's start with our theory. We use sense of belonging theory to guide the development, design, and analysis of our study. Sense of belonging is a basic need and a human right. It refers to a feeling that people matter to one another and to each other in a group, and it reflects this shared faith or belief that somehow our individual needs will be met through our collective commitment to being together. Sense of belonging has a wide range of definitions, and one aspect of the theory, which is in 3 parts, is it helps you understand what sense of belonging is and what sense of belonging is not. You want to read through the pages of this book and other studies of belonging, some of the papers that we've published together, and collect all of these definitions to discern what is belonging, especially applied in education. That's the first thing that the model can do for you. There's a second aspect of the theory of belonging that frames it as a need, but also explains how it relates to our other needs, and then juxtaposes or lays them beside our needs up against these key outcomes in education, like creativity, innovation, spontaneity, and morality. In this particular text, belonging theory is grounded in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow says this: as humans, we all have basic needs: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, sex, and a toothbrush. And that's fundamentally our basic needs. But we also have a need to feel safe and secure. Beyond this, we have middle needs like love and belongingness. This reflects the extent to which humans are motivated, wired to be in care, support, and community with one another. A correlate of belonging is mattering. Said differently and directly, mattering and belonging are not the same concepts, but they are closely related or highly correlated with one another. Mattering has 4 components to it. That is, people tend to feel a sense of belonging when they feel like they matter, and mattering happens when individuals pick up cues and signs and sensations that communicate, I am the object of someone's attention. People need me. I play an important role, and there are folks in my corner who are concerned about my successes and my failures. There are other features of the feelings associated with belonging that are a part of this model. These are the 3 sort of bullets that are under the 4 dimensions of mattering that call to our attention that these feelings don't happen automatically. We typically start from a place of pluralistic ignorance where we feel like we're the only one who feels lonely, we're the only one who's left out, that also these feelings that we start with are actually pretty temporary and they change with time. We'll talk about this in just a bit. The last part of this model separates our basic needs from our psychological needs from these higher order needs captured by the apex of the triangle. This is the second sort of component of the theory. Now let's talk about the third and final component, that is the model's core elements.
There are 7 core elements. First, belonging is a basic human need, whether you are tall, short, wide, skinny, green hair, blue hair, blonde hair. Indeed, it is universal. It has there are two types of needs. One is expressed, the other is latent. For example, an expressed need is like maybe at noon, your stomach begins to growl and it's expressing, or you are expressing that you are hungry and you may need to go get something to eat. For me, my personal choice would be Cheerios. Second, belonging is sufficient to drive behavior, whether it is pro-social behaviors or anti-social behaviors. It takes on heightened importance in certain contexts or time. It's related to mattering, which we already discussed. The 4 elements are attention, dependence, importance, and ego extension. It's also influenced by one's identity. In our research, we review or investigate African-American males living with disabilities compared to same race peers without disabilities. And we understand that they may share similar experiences, but because of the additional marginalized identity that the disabled student possesses, it will create different experiences for them. 6, it leads to positive outcomes and success, including performing well academically, engaging in clubs and organizations, and persistence. We must know that belonging must be satisfied on a continual basis. You may feel a sense of belonging on Monday, but you may not feel it on Friday. You may feel it in one class, but not another. You may feel it on campus, but not in the community.
So we use belonging theory to guide the design, the development of a video intervention that we then tested in our study and ultimately got results. The design and development of the video intervention in this exploratory study was exactly informed by belonging theory. We'll show you how. On the left side of your screen, you see an image.
So at the top, you see Dear Students. This was our attempt to personalize the message, whether you are an on-campus student or off-campus, a commuter or residential student, this message is for you. Second, you see that Mondays can be hard. There are some out there that believe I'm the only one who has difficulty or challenges on Monday. I am the only one who has to pay for school. I am the only one who is on campus that is a first-generation student. I am the only one who has to work and do homework. This is what we call pluralistic ignorance. It's defined as a phenomenon where individuals or students believe that their ideas, thoughts, feelings, and or worries differ from others.
So imagine the models that we just showed you, and you've picked up this idea that sense of belonging is a basic need. It is a human need. Everybody wants to belong. It is personal. It requires high-touch customization, and pluralistic ignorance is one feature of the feelings associated with it. So we constructed, curated, even developed the first scene to really handle those aspects of belonging. We created or directed other scenes of the short video to tap into other aspects of the model. Yes, you heard me right. We did not tackle all 13 parts of belonging theory in a single video. Neither should you in a single study. But we found those pieces that we thought were most appropriate for what we were trying to test in this particular project. And the other of this is we thought we could tap into aspects of mattering. We saw the 4 components of mattering. We did not touch all 4 components, but the one around ego extension we were able to tap in this scene shown on the right side of your video that says to students across the globe, you've got this, in small print in parentheses, someone's in your corner rooting for you. We said earlier, this is a deductive, quantitative, exploratory project. Exploratory research, as a quick refresher, are studies that seek to understand how a phenomenon works. Generally speaking, there's not enough information. It could represent a new project, new terrain, or in this case, a new intervention about which there would be no existing studies to ground your understanding and your framing of your hypothesis. It calls for an exploratory research design. Findings of exploratory research often lead to the identification of new concepts about which you can collect data in the future.
So when you are conducting research, ask yourself these 5 W's. 1, what? 2, when? 3, where? 4, to whom or which cases? 5, how? And in our exploratory study, we checked off each of these boxes. What was the video intervention testing? When? On Monday in the fall 2024 term. At the start of class, where in class, and the class was Positive Psychology 314, to whom all enrolled in the course, how online via Microsoft Teams.
So of course, now you probably want to know, well then, what did we find? Let's talk about it. In order to get to the results, we first had to take our data from the class, prepare it for analysis, and then conduct our analysis. Unlike existing data or secondary data, we had to manually enter our data into a spreadsheet and prepare it for our analysis. We built our own data set similar to the one that you see on the screen, where we took the information from our students, entered it into the spreadsheet, and that ultimately led to a raw data set, much like what you see on the screen. We had 4 variables looking at students' gender, their race, their pre-test belonging, that is before they watched the video, and then their post-test belonging score after they watched the video. If we had entered variables about the course that they were enrolled in or the institution they attended, those would have been constants in the variable or the data set, because every single case in our data set was enrolled in Psych 314, Positive Psychology, all at the same institution. In the way of the spirit of transparency, we should admit that we had about 2 or 3 students who did not report a post-test score on belonging. They watched the video, did not enter their score in the appropriate site. So we have missing values for them on those variables.
We took a deductive approach. Recall that deductive research starts with theory to test the hypothesis through the collection of data. Our independent variable was the inspirational reel. The dependent variable was the sense of belonging scores. We hypothesized that if students watch this brief reel, then their belonging scores will increase.
And so with that, we ultimately took those data that I showed you earlier and we analyzed our data to get our results. Now let's talk about the results. But of course, we can't tell you. You'll have to read our blog. So take out your smart device, scan the QR code, hop over to Psychology Today, the Belonging Matters blog, and we invite you to read our piece called Boosting Students' Sense of Belonging in Under 60 Seconds. Here's what we can tell you. Fostering student belonging isn't magic. but it can produce magical results. And with that, this concludes our webinar. We want to thank you for your time. Please feel free to scan this QR code for more resources, white papers, and the like that we have written. We invite you to follow us on all things social media at Do Good Work. We look forward to click the button to subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop some comments in the chat, and let us know if there are other topics you would like us to address in future webinars. Thank you for your attention. We look forward until the next.